midweek update. Last 2 weeks of session. So we are joined by the lady who went from minority leader to what do you have, the second biggest caucus now, right? Of the three?
Depends on the day.
House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics Midweek Update. We've had you on the show before, but now we can actually talk a little hogs, dogs, and logs, and I can pick your brains a little bit deeper. It doesn't take long to pick mine. That's why if I sit there, it takes about 3 or 4 minutes. But we're going to have you for a half hour, hopefully, unless you get called back over to the Capitol. So if she bolts out of here, it's not the place is on fire or anything. It's that she's got actual work to do. Start off, got to thank a couple people. Buddy Mike and Lee Summit, this excellent German top Stein on Oktoberfest Stein, and an old friend of mine and someone that I think you know, Burley, gave me this FDR Anheuser-Busch Stein. I think it's the man of the 20s. It is a glorious big Stein with the top. Yeah, I mean, that's at least 2 beers go in there, right? And I still drink the Bud Light one. So, and I always like to thank somebody. Very grateful. People send me these things. I really appreciate this. A lady named Karen from Blue Springs, who knows old Carson Ross, actually sent me this. Joe Teasdale. He's the guy that walked the state. He actually, in between Governor Bond's 2 tremendous terms in office, he had a term in there. But what a cool throwback. Thank you very much. I promise you, I've ordered a little thing. We're going to put these in here somewhere where I can stick these on my old UFCW scarf. I just don't wear a scarf.
You would look good in a scarf.
I feel like I would, but Cook gives those things out, and they're like great. They're like actual of giveaways. They're like thick scarves. So I'm going to hang all these pins on them. I think it'll hold them.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we have to talk about the biggest story today. Before we get to the budget thing, look, Crystal, I'm no hero. I mean, a lot of people are saying it, and I probably am a hero.
They're talking about it in the coffee shops.
I'm the Gandhi of High Street. I'm the Zelensky of Jefferson City. I mean, of course, people are saying those things, and they're right. But I'm not one to brag or call attention to myself. But if you tune to your Jefferson City News Tribune, a tremendously well-written story, there are no unmetered parking tickets this month. It's Amnesty Week. It's almost like it's a free city. The people in Kiev would look over here with jealousy and wonder in Bakhmut or wherever. We had our own Bakhmut, but now I've liberated it. It's all good. And there's a couple shout outs we have to give. We'll bring a little news here. So Mayor Ron Fitzwater, the mayor of Jeff City, America's mayor, came in and there was a bill that the Thomas Jefferson of Parking legislation filed. Senate Bill 369. Justin Brown filed it. It basically, you had to have a cop do this crap. It's not just a fundraising scam. You have to have a cop write tickets. And so everybody in the Capitol except the Municipal League. The Municipal League was pro-scam. There was like 20 people that was anti-scam, myself included. I actually put my overalls on testifying. It went out of committee unanimously. Most people tried to vote 2 and 3 times. You had other former senators were showing up trying to vote. They tried to have a special session of the Senate in that hearing room to vote it out. But Mayor Fitzwater wrote a very respectful letter to the Senate and said, I just think that if you pass this, it's your right. We'll follow the law. We want to be good partners. But if for some reason you don't, we're going to handle this problem. This is an issue. Councilman Spencer said at the hearing, I'm sorry, we've done poorly. We're going to fix it. I think you will fix it. Don't you?
I don't know about that, but I will tell you that I love that this is going at a local level and that local control is coming back to this conversation because it absolutely should be decided. But yeah.
You've been victimized by the scam, right?
I did have to pay a parking ticket a couple weeks ago.
We have a mutual friend behind you, the newest addition to our backdrop here, the Midweek Update. 3D Doug and Flat Doug have both got tickets in part of the scam. Really, I don't know anybody that hasn't had shitloads of tickets just shoved in their pockets, but thanks to someone, I'm not going to say me, but a lot of people are, you don't have that problem anymore. So today about 3:00, I understand Senator Brown's going to respond to the letter and saying, because of the integrity of guys like Scott Spencer, Schwartz, Spicer, and Ron Fitzwater, he's going to shelve this piece of legislation because he believes their word. And I mean, what more could you do but this? I mean, honestly.
I think it's great.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can just say thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be able to park on the street.
So a couple things right off the bat. It's a different world in that rotunda right now. Your members that some lobbyists might not have known who they were 2 months ago I think everybody has found one of those little handouts the co-ops give out and looking for the members. And now they.
Who's this freshman Democrat?
Yeah, now I got to see this person. I need their vote.
Yeah.
So the dynamic, you just stopped me where I'm wrong. So you have a Republican caucus. It's grown. You shrank it by 3, but it's still what 110, 111.
111, yeah.
Which is frankly probably, it's not really a leadership issue. It's that there's not, in the majority caucus, there's probably 35 things to do, right? Like substantive things to do, carry legislation, chair committees, that kind of stuff. And if you have that many senior members, what kind of works out? Because if you fall in line at some point, you'll get to do one of those big jobs. With 110, I mean, there's just not 110 things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people look for attention and they get ostracized, and it fractures. And it's fractured for a long time. But now you have enough of your kind of, wacko suburban people, and frankly a little bit of your folks down in Springfield. Yeah, jump some moonshine in the water down there. And it's and so they on a social issue they have 110 votes, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to arm toddlers or make sure nobody
giving toddlers guns, the Republicans are all for.
If gay people try to smile, they're gonna stop that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's 110 votes for that, but a lot of real legislation there's not 110 votes for.
There are not.
There's not 82 votes for.
Oftentimes
which is where you've been sitting and waiting, right? And there you step in.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting that, folks are coming to us because they need help to pass legislation. It's interesting when folks are getting angry because they say, oh, Democrats are killing things. I'm like, there's only 51 of us. So I don't know that we can pass or kill anything. But yeah, we're absolutely found ourselves in a situation this year because of the Republican infighting that folks need us to get some substantive legislation through.
It is, you look on your face, tell the story, but it's got to feel good. You've served here. This is your 7th year. For a lot of that time, you were having to just kind of sit and get ready for maybe a time like this. Now that it's come, I would think there'd be a temptation in your caucus to maybe overreach, maybe demand a lot. That's got to be a very tough balancing act.
Yeah, and I would say it hasn't been so much just sitting back and waiting. Like the caucus has been making moves for years to rebuild, to build infrastructure, to get us to a point where we are extremely relevant when it comes to passing policy here. And I am very proud of all of my, again, in a super minority, we are such a relevant piece of the conversation right now. And so, yeah, absolutely. It is, you want to ask for things. We are asking for big things. We are also asking for things that we know we can actually get done, things that folks, a lot of our allies want to see happen. We have conversations on public policy right now where we've got labor folks are really wanting, small business owners are engaging in. And so we've got different demographics that we are representing and being able to say yes to things or stop some things that we don't want to move forward as well.
Or horse trade, right?
Yeah,
just gotta have
absolutely.
Things done. For a long time that's been interesting. And you saw it in some cities first. Jeff Abusi kind of educated me on this, and Mike Kelly a long time ago, how over time in the state, and really I think it's around the country, you have Republicans that are more and more extreme, countered by Democrats that are more and more extreme. They stream each other on social media, which drives, and you've got business people that want to succeed, either from the labor side, because there's no labor union without a company to pay them. They're sort of fused together in a lot of things. Now, more and more, you're seeing the chamber and labor together.
Yeah. And more we're seeing also those folks jump with us in these conversations, right? Like when we have conversations about the big social issues in this building that, in my opinion, are atrocious, you're seeing the chamber coming out and saying, why are we spending our time and our energy on these issues when we should actually be partnering with these folks to get good public policy done that helps people?
Yeah, I tell you, I remember the last, I don't like to characterize something like this, but I think most people view it as anti-gay. There was an SGR 39. I think it was in 15. Were you?
I was not here yet.
It was the year before.
Yeah.
And whatever you think about it, was like gay people, you could not make a wedding cake for them or something. And it was one of those things that had never happened in the state. It was just was what it was, right? It was
the social issue of the day.
The suburban wine of the week happened to be this one. And the Nancy Giddens in the Kansas City Chamber were the first people to come down and testify. Before it was over, the Missouri Chamber, with that old crotchety white guy, Dan Meehan, who I would say a lot of people on the LGBT activism side would look at and immediately think is probably not helpful to us. He has been, and I don't think it's like Dan B. I don't know Dan's personal belief, but I know his members' belief is pretty public. Hey, knock it off. This is no longer helpful to us. Yep. This is not great. And now you're seeing them even turn. I mean, you've got some Republicans that I'm not even sure they're the party of business anymore. I think they're the party of whining on Facebook.
I don't disagree with that. It definitely feels that way. And it has been really great to see some of these folks step up when it comes to these big social culture war fights that we've been having. Nancy is still on the front lines of this conversation. Shannon Cooper has given one of the best testimonies that I have ever seen when it comes to, yes. And so they're jumping in. And I think the conversation really, and to go back to the original point of this, we need to be spending our time on things that actually help Missourians. And we Democrats have found ourselves in a situation where we are able to flex a little bit and try to get some good things done.
Next crime I commit, I'm having Cooper testify for me, whether he was even there or not. So the budget, you got an old boy from your neck of the woods that helps write that thing.
He does okay.
I think Springfield does okay, right?
I think Springfield does pretty great in the budget.
It was interesting. I find Cody Smith to be an intelligent guy and like a professional guy. Like if he was in the business world, you want to work with that guy because he's professional, carries himself well, but I mean, it does kind of always blow up somehow. And this year, like at the last day, right? The DEI thing came up. Now you're an experienced legislator at this point. To me, you don't blame the guy running for Senate for wanting to get attention, right? Yeah, blame the leadership for saying that's not how we do this.
Well, and I think what's important to say here too is we have a whole lot of budget bills, and that amendment was offered on every single one. And so for somebody to come out and say, "Oh, we didn't know this was happening," we couldn't stop him. He had to offer. They could have stopped this on House Bill 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7. We went all day with this discussion, and it completely overtook the substance of the budget debate, which was pretty frustrating.
Well, I mean, there's a one Missourian that said the buck stops here. Well, it stops with the budget chairman or the speaker, right?
One would think.
And it didn't. And I don't think that the speaker had a big active role in this. I think, you got a guy that's been budget chair, why you trust him. But I have seen this, and I don't know how much of this you picked up since that happened, right? I'm not sure that everybody that had any sense left the Capitol thinking, well, that was stupid. I mean, I don't think anybody got in their cars heading home being like, well, I'm glad we did that.
Right.
That aged poorly while you were doing it. I think the numbers started going down.
They did.
From budget bill to budget bill.
Absolutely.
And again, I don't. Politicians do stunts, right? Democrats, Republicans. You don't fault the person for that. I really don't. I mean, it's their job to get attention so they can run for Senate, right? You have members do it all the time. It's really the people in charge, right? So I think people really quickly saw, well, this is not going to happen. And then I thought I saw Cody Smith really it might have been the best time he's had as budget chair in the 2 weeks since that DEI amendment. I think him and your senator seem to get along pretty good.
I honestly have not been privy to how those conversations are going between the two of them. What I will tell you is it was interesting that at the beginning of this discussion, it seemed as though the House budget chairman was digging in on the DEI thing. If you look at how the votes landed, Conservative caucus was all in the entire way, right? And then we did start to pick off some moderate Republicans who were realizing that our entire state budget would be in jeopardy.
Way to categorize that though as a moderate. If you're pro-business, I mean, the moderate would be the one who's anti-business. The conservative would be the one that thinks, well, this amendment would make it where you couldn't pay the light bill.
Well, okay.
To me, that's like conservative to want to pay your bills, right?
I would, yes, but the folks who identify as in one demographic or another on the day might not agree with that statement. Did you just
double back on identification? You're saying they're trans Republicans?
Oh, stop. Do we want to have that conversation?
Well, you don't want to identify people.
What I'm saying is that if you look at the group of folks who tend to identify themselves as the conservative caucus within the House. Do they act conservative all the time? Absolutely not. But that is kind of the groups and how they split.
That trans centers are bad unless the charter school people are doing it, then they're good, and you should fund them more. It's a bizarre thing, and I guess I as you know, you're a highly decorated elected official. I'm a simple hillbilly, but I just don't understand how trans centers and the people that run them could be bad. But we want to send more kindergartners to these people and entrust them with their education. It's almost like they're only for them if they pay them. So the trans center people should have cut a check, right?
I am so lost in the direction that you're trying to go here.
Wash U has a charter school,
yes,
little kids. Wash U has a transgender center that I've been reliably informed by Republicans is bad.
I mean, this whole conversation about Wash U and everything that's going on is, as I've said before many times with you, this is just a culture war that is trying to get attention, because you're exactly right. It depends on which topic that we want to talk about. that when they seem to care about Washington University, when they want to support it and when they don't, and when they want to attack it and the folks who work there. And so it's just, again, this is the topic of the day right now. They'll move on to the next demographic that they want to target for the next election cycle. And when it comes to this, when we have the conversation around charter schools versus public schools, depending on the topic, depends on where they land in terms of their support. So
on the transgender thing, I personally think that you're right. There's a lot of folks doing this for attention. They're doing this because these people can't defend themselves. There's just not enough of them. Enough people haven't been around a trans person, I would say. I didn't know I was around a gay person for a long time. Nobody as outwardly gay that I knew till college, maybe toward the end of it. But after I was around gay people, I was like, well, it's not that big a deal. And with a trans person, I have a friend who is trans, and it's not that big a deal, really. I mean, is it different? Yeah, it's a little odd. Of course it is. I think that's just lying to say it's not. From my life experience, it's odd. It's not a big deal. Before you know it, like gay people are going to get married. Oh, no. Doesn't anybody give a damn anymore?
I don't think that it is a big deal. And I think that you're kind of hitting the nail on the head of when I'm not exposed to something, it's odd to me. And what we're seeing, not only in Missouri, but across the country, is this thing that folks don't understand they're trying to legislate. And that happens all the time on so many things. And we will have debates on the floor about, let's talk about nurse practitioners. And folks will stand up and say, I'm a nurse, so let me be the expert on this conversation. And folks listen to them, as they should, right? Here's a conversation where folks don't understand it. And instead of actually listening to the families impacted and the folks who are a part of this conversation, they're moving forward with legislation when they simply don't understand it.
But on the other side of this, I think there's some serious people in the Republican caucus who have serious reservations about treating kids with drugs that would block them from having puberty. Whether they understand it, whether it's a matter of understanding or a matter of they just, by their worldview, think that's wrong. I think there's some members of the Democratic Party in the legislature that also have serious questions. I think that this is an issue where I've watched a lot of issues that were just straight up bigotry to get attention. Bigotry for bucks, or in some places, likes and clicks. I think there's people that have honest reservations. I don't think this is an issue that's just, oh, well, you're just a bigot.
I agree that there are serious reservations about this topic. And again, because a lot of folks don't understand it, because they haven't sat down with the medical professionals to actually understand. If a kid wakes up one day and says, hey, mom, I don't feel like a girl and I think I'm a boy, and you start that process, it is not something that happens overnight. Medication is not being passed out like candy. There are several medical professionals involved in this discussion, months of therapy, all sorts of folks. It's an entire team of people. And so,
are you sure that whatever the policies are and procedures for this, which are, I'm sure, evolving because this is a very new thing, I would wonder if you're in that business and you're comfortable and you promote and you have a big sensitivity to people young kids who feel trans. I absolutely think there's kids that could think a lot of things at 13 that they don't think at 15. And by 17, maybe come full circle back around. It's a volatile time. You are growing.
I have teenagers.
There you go. I've got one that's just 13 now, and I'm constantly afraid I'm going to do something wrong.
You probably are.
I probably are. That's also true, Dan. But I think I do think you could see people being very pro this and looking for a reason to help them and not maybe give some critical questions. And part of it is it's very new, and having procedures is hard when something's new. I saw WashU. I'm always a little skeptical of that, no matter who you are. And that's not WashU is a tremendous world-class education.
What I will say about that report that I think is worth looking at, though, is the actual numbers of kiddos that they had and how many of them were getting medication, how many were just getting therapy. And those numbers, I mean, that part is not an opinion. This is who we saw, right? And so I do think that there are pieces of that report that even with that perspective, you could say, okay, they saw these many kids.
The next time Mike Parsons screws up something, right? What if he said, okay, Mike Deering's going to be in charge, and Mike Deering showed up and said, we're good. Would Crystal Quaid buy that line of shit? There's no way. You would never.
But I would sunshine and I would say, show me the numbers, which I do all the time, right?
I'm just saying you'd be very skeptical of Mike Parsons.
And I think, again,
or Mike Deering investigating Mike
Parsons. And again, I think that's where this conversation, I understand the skepticism. I understand when I have the conversation with my colleagues who are confused, wanting to know what's going on. And yes, I understand people, if you legitimately think these bad things are happening to kids. Yeah, I get that. Where Senator Moon, like he 100% believes that these terrible things are happening.
He really believes it.
He really believes it.
Some of those guys are playing with it. He believes it.
And I can understand where that perspective comes from to an extent. Part of our job as lawmakers, though, is to become educated on topics before we legislate on them. I don't walk in and just vote yes or no on something without reading the bill, without doing my research, without talking to the folks impacted on both sides of a conversation. Anytime a lobbyist comes to me and says, I need you to vote yes on this, I say, okay, why? They tell me and I say, okay, why is the other side of no? And it's my job as a lawmaker to do my due diligence and research. This is a topic where that's just not happening. It's just not. And if it was, we would be slowing down.
Let's talk. Tell folks behind the curtain how a conference committee on the budget works. No matter how many members you've ever had, Democrats always matter this week.
We absolutely matter this week.
No matter how you, it doesn't matter how big or small the minority is, or how much, if you're working the lot rotunda, if you're friends with the speaker, it doesn't matter. On a conference committee, the Democrats matter. Explain as much as you're willing to the politics and how you approach that.
Yeah, so the Budget Conference Committees is really the only conference committee that meets and actually has an entire hearing. And the Democrats in the House get to have 2 members, and then the Republicans have their members, both House and Senate, and we all sit together.
But the math here that matters is you have 2 and they have 3.
Yes.
And the Senate has 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And a total of 10.
We all sit at a table together, and we get to say House side or Senate side of the bill. Which one do we want to vote for on every single budget item that we disagreed on?
And a lot of times, all the Republicans decide they want to vote for the House or the Senate bill, right?
Oftentimes.
So you could lose 6-4.
Sometimes, but when they're open. Yeah. So when we see what we're seeing now, kind of contrary to your point earlier, the 2 Republican Senate chairmen might be getting along. But at the end of the day, the differences between the budget, there are a lot of opportunities where they disagree with each other.
I assume you're sending a couple people to the conference. You picked the conferees, correct?
I did not, actually. For the first time in well over 20 years, the speaker did not take my recommendations for the budget conferees.
Wow, why?
That would be a good question to ask him. But that said, the budget Democrats from the House side are people that I trust, and that even if they have not served on the budget before, have been spending a lot of time with our budget team who have been doing the work.
People that weren't on
that have never served on budget before, yes. But our team is ready, and we're ready to sit at the table. And but to your question, where it matters is when, say, the House Republicans are a no on something, but we really like the Senate version, then we buddy up with my Senator Lincoln Huff and give the votes of the House members to them. And so oftentimes
which is as old as time. And there was a time back in the day when I worked in the legislature, Rod Jetton, the speaker, he would buddy up with the Senate Democrats, and they would win.
Yeah.
It is the time when whichever party leadership has the best relationships. I've never heard of them not doing that. That's odd.
Yeah.
As if it's just frustration from losing.
You would have to ask the speaker why he chose to break tradition in that way.
It's not really Dean's fault they've lost, huh? That's interesting.
But yeah, so there's going to be a lot of times over the next 24 hours where you will see the House Democrats voting with the Republican and Democrat senators. You might see a handful where we decide to take the House position on something with Representative Smith. But this is a great example of where those relationships matter, where the months of work going into the budget come into play, because we have been talking.
It's things like this is why people make fun of the House. When you just pull conferees that aren't even on budget.
You're still stuck on this.
People do the guns and abortion.
We can talk about that for a while. I mean, I already had my time to process
this is
the
just sort of
change
why
in
people roll
things.
their eyes about House stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That the respect and that decorum conversation is real in the House right now. It's never happened before, and I've served under a lot of speakers.
Maybe even been driven an Uber one. Who knows? So let's run through this. We got a few minutes left. Yeah. So we do our tip sheet every time. I want your thoughts. So let's start. I'm going to go from the back, actually. So you guys don't tend to attack each other, but the Republicans do. So coming from the back end, Razor, Senator Washington's probably fine, right?
Yeah.
The Boot Hill is a different place. The world was shook up when Senator Carter won. It was a different world. I've seen Democrats lose primaries. I've never seen a Republican lose a primary. It's just not what they do. I've lost a general, but never a primary. And most senators don't even have re-elections at all.
It was pretty shocking.
So Senator Bean, though, you had Bill White, who I would say even his biggest supporters could say could be a little gruff at times. Joplin's a big enough town where that'll get around, but small enough where it could get around. And Senator Carter ran a great race. Very nice person. Very good campaign. Lots of folks want to throw in to help. Then they probably threw in to hurt Bill, but she was the beneficiary, right? But the boot is a little different. You have hills and flats. Unless you're going to get like 3 flatlanders running against Jason and 1 hill person, he'll be fine. It's just a different world.
And I think Senator Bean's well respected. He does work with folks from all the different facets of the caucus as well as the Democrats, and I think he's done a good job.
Well, I also think Jason Bean just looks like what a senator would look like if you shut your eyes and just think, okay, if I'm thinking in the Boot Hill, what's a Boot Hill farmer look like? I think it looks like Jason Bean. And unless you're willing to get a bunch of people down there to run, which I just don't see, I think he'll go easily. I also think Mike Moon. There's a bunch of people that are going to want a primary of Mike Moon.
Yeah.
Year from down there, I don't see it.
You know, I think that primary is a thing that we've been seeing across the state and country. Really, is that it's hard for the extreme in a primary not to be the winner, right? And
you know, if you're in Pineville and he's your new senator, when you meet Mike Moon, he is the gentleman's gentleman. Couldn't be nicer. He's got that mustache. He's always well dressed, and he knocks on your door. Name me a nicer person to have a conversation with than Mike Moon. I mean, he does have some views that are probably shooting for Republicans, but you don't know that when you're knocking doors.
Right.
I think Mike Moon is just very, very hard to beat.
Yeah.
Plus, Mike Moon, whatever you think of his beliefs, I believe he actually believes them. You know what I mean?
I do agree.
And I think people respect your sincerity, even if they don't agree with it. You know?
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I think it would be hard to beat him in a primary.
Carl Esslinger. There's 2 places the subs move in the state. They move to Lake of the Ozarks and Hood Branson, which makes it a little dicier. You got Porter Wagner's hometown in with Branson, Yakov Smirnov's hometown, I guess. I think she'll be fine, but that district could gravitate over there when she's done.
I think so too. I think again, she's somebody who's well respected in her community and in the Senate, and but when she's done, I think it could shift a little bit.
Angela Mosley's district is one that people can run in primaries. It's a real factionalized group up there. You know, I think Doug Beck, he likes to tell folks that, oh, he lost Webster Groves, but I'm like, Doug, come on, man. He's going to win, right? This will not be a particularly
absolutely. Doug's going to win. He's going to raise money. Folks, I think that he, by raising money, can stave off a primary, win the general, but he does have to do a little bit of work in that fundraising place, but he can do it.
I think people want to see you do a little bit of work.
And Doug's an amazing legislator. We've seen that this session. Yeah. He has been an amazing senator, brokering serious deals across the board. So I think absolutely he's going to win his reelection. I'm not worried about Doug.
I assume the primary in Steve Roberts' district. Be interesting. I still think, you know, when you get in a situation where you could have 2 or 3 people run, the incumbent's in a major advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there are multiple people who try to primary the senator, then that does help him numerically.
Rick Braden, kind of depends on Houcks, right? Houcks runs, be the top primary in the state. If he doesn't, well, it won't, right?
Yeah. And I think that I think he's going to. I mean, he's not told me yes or no, but just based on his moves in the building.
Could see Hafner too, right?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one yet.
If you have if Hafner runs, I mean, he'll do well in Cass County. If Brad do well in Cass County, that'll be interesting. That might be the path to House winning, really.
And I think that could be a very big money primary too.
Yes, I think the trial attorneys, you know, to his credit, they bet big on Bratton, and he stayed loyal, stuck right with him. Senator Gannon, if she runs, right? I think I noticed she voted with the DEI amendment, which surprised me.
I did see that.
That makes me think maybe she is thinking about running.
Yeah.
But some people question whether she'll run or not. I mean, Elaine Gannon's life is pretty great. Dennis is a great dude. She does this out of service. Her life is probably better if she doesn't do this, right?
Probably most.
Well, there's a lot of folks I think this is probably a better life. Elaine Gannon's got grandkids and she can afford to go see them, and her and Dennis are successful. She does because she wants to do it. It's just she wants to do it again. Yeah. Be interesting.
But I think you're right in that some of the votes she's taken are a little out of character for her history. So it does say that she's gearing up and getting ready.
She's keeping her options open.
Yeah.
Senator Rader, looks like she's going to run for lieutenant governor. Be interesting. That leaves the Cape people usually vote for the Cape person. And they did vote for Kelly Swamp, but not by as much as they normally do, right? So it's interesting to me that it's how, Holly Rader won everywhere else. Now that people think you can run and not be from Cape, you may have a bunch of people file, which would divide that up. It's funny, in the suburbans, it's about how nuts can you be, right? Do you really go drink ivermectin or whatever? But in rural Missouri, it's about where you're from, where's your daddy from, where's your kinfolks from.
Yeah.
and you do well geographically, and then issues are kind of down there, but it's really geography and money.
Yeah.
Jamie Berger make a hell of a senator. Barry Holmes has kind of got that mentality. Cape folks are Cape folks. Rick Francis would be a great senator. He'd be hilarious to just imagine being on the other side of Rick when he could really just, as one person, stop you. That'll be interesting to see what happens I think you're going to know real fast where that landscape is right when she announces.
Absolutely. Everybody will jump in.
Maggie going to win Lauren's race?
Yes.
Victor Holbert?
Yeah.
The representative, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Cousin? Is it cousin?
Well, they're spelled right. It's not.
I don't know.
Right. It's not Smith. So.
Yes, but I do think Maggie pulls it out. Maggie's done an amazing job as a legislator, and she can raise money.
You going to win Columbia in the Senate race?
Yes. Yeah.
Steve Weber, who's going to be the person?
I don't know who's going to run against Stephen, but he's already fundraising, just killing it when it comes to fundraising. Again, another really well-respected person. And Columbia is moving. We now have 4 Democratic House members from Columbia.
But even if I agree that even if it didn't, though, you clipped off that extra county, which is how Schaefer and Rowden won, was with the extra county. Without the extra county, they wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
Now there's no extra county.
Yeah. I think it's going to be,
It'll be a primary, right?
Stephen's going to have to raise money, which he's already proving he can.
Yeah.
I think the Republicans are going to want to hold on to it, but I think it is a Democratic flip next cycle. Absolutely.
Before we get to the top 4, I'm taking a second. Peculiar Winery, terrific weekend over at Judge Lett's Winery in Peculiar. It's right on the road. It's actually great. It's kind of got this is the nicer version. I wanted to get they got an Addams Family font because it's from Peculiar. Crawfish boil, which I don't know if folks in Webster County do crawfish. I like crawfish a lot.
We do crawfish.
She put on a great feed, went over there. Gussie went and caught frogs. I drank wine. It was a hell of a good time. Appreciate Judge Lett, and I'll drink out of this at some point. These are sort of more of a coffee thing, which I'm not as big on.
You can drink cold things in this too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
cold or hot.
Also, Marriott. I'm going to up the challenge. So last week we offered you the deal. I've offered folks, okay, Courtyard by Marriott. You're a professional. I mean, if you don't stay there, you're just sort of like second tier.
It's a beautiful space, and the outside patio it's great.
View of the Capitol. If somebody says, "Oh, meet me at Capitol Plaza," you're like, "Well, you suck," and you probably try to get out of it, right? So what I've offered folks is, okay, if you get online, of course it'll be more expensive. It's better, duh. $20. If it's within $20 of another hotel here or the Courtyard, go book your stay at the Courtyard. If it's not worth the $20, you come see me. I give you the $20. If it is worth the $20 and you see me, you buy me a beer. You know how many of these I've had bought since January?
How many?
12. 12 beers. So I'm going to up it. Last year we got Sirpoy to pitch in, but Sirpoy wouldn't have probably paid you to Welch. I'm going to up it 10 more, and then I'm going to throw in $50. Because right now it's hard to get in the Courtyard.
I've got a campaign you could just give that to.
Well, you'll have to show me that you stayed at the Courtyard, and you'll have to lie and say it wasn't worth the $50 because it will be. You'll actually plan to do this to get my $50. It'll be so nice you'll buy me the beer, so you'll be out $52.
It's a great space.
Courtyard by Marriott. Get online. Look, I don't even know if you get in next week. I mean, you have to call and get on a waiting list probably. But Vito says it's coming up. Start right now. It's like everybody at the Bothwell. You book the Bothwell 6 months out at the State Fair. Go right now. Book your room down at the for Vito session. Just go for the roast. We have a great roast the night before. Stay 3 nights, Jeff City. You'll love it. Terrific place to spend the fall. Get on right now and book 3 nights. You'll thank me later. We'll talk about this more as the summer unfolds. Phil Crispinelli in the 23rd. They're already. It's funny. You can't. I mean, if Phil isn't conservative enough, good God, right? I mean, that's going to be a nasty primary. But I tend to think Phil wins that. The former Winsfield judge who ran for Senate last cycle, Mike Carter, may jump in. That'd be an interesting thing. I mean, Mike he'll spend some money of his own. That'll be an interesting wrinkle to that race. Phil's been sitting on that race a long time.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't think anybody can credibly out conservative Phil, but if the attacks get nasty enough, right?
Yeah, I mean that's always the risk that you run with these primaries. But he's done a pretty good job of staking his opinions, and folks know where he stands.
In Rizzo's district, it's like with where Boone County is trending, Eastern Jacksonville going the other way. I see everybody's getting behind Andrew McMullen now. It seems like there's a big push to fall in line behind him. Robbie Sauls is going to be the guy.
Yep, he's our guy.
Then I see Joe Nicola, a candidate who was a candidate down in the 8th last time. The districting swept him down, but his house was in the 11th. So now he's going to run in the 11th.
Okay.
It's going to be hard to move your support and your doors you've knocked and all that, and just transfer that to another district to the north. That's not a that's a tough thing. I mean, I think Nicole's got a. It's going to be interesting to watch him try to transfer that support to a different set of voters, because he had a base of voters that voted for him once, but he's having to leave those behind to go to independents, where I'm sure he's known. I'm sure, the guy obviously has some political ability, but that's a tough needle to thread.
It's essentially starting from scratch when you have, and even my House district, when we did redistricting, I got a whole new swath north of town in place, and I had never knocked a single door there, and so it's starting completely from ground zero.
So Koenig's leaving West County. Feels like West County's changing, and I thought Deb Lavender would have done better than she did. It seems like it's changing, but not enough. David Gregory, good politician. Seems like if they nominate him, they got a good shot, right?
Yeah, but he didn't do as great as we thought he would in the primary last time. But David is again a lawmaker that folks know. They know where he stands on things. And I believe he self-funded a little bit in the last race. So we'll see if he chooses to do so this time. When it comes to Representative Lavender, she hasn't said whether or not she wants to run this time. I think the last election cycle, I think folks were expecting a little better of an outcome, but there were also so many other factors in that cycle that really came to play. She raised a ridiculous amount of money for a Democrat in that Senate race. And so I think if she decides to jump in again, I think that she would be a really great fundraiser and have a good shot.
I think the margin that Koenig won by showed that the district's still Republican, and he was probably going to win. But the margin, I think, had to be due to Andrew Koenig knocks doors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just knocks the hell. I mean, he is you're never going to outwork that guy. I mean, even at being a senator, he's a hardworking guy. But I think the fact that Representative Lavender did knock doors, I don't think the folks were put out by Andrew on their door. And I don't think they've been put out by Representative Lavender either.
And we know that, Deb has shown, she's ran many times before she won her House seat, and then she has won her House seat every time since then. When she is out knocking doors and running a full-fledged campaign, she's somebody to watch out for.
I do think that was a bad call in hindsight, just from the voters' perceptive standpoint.
It was a difficult position. I think a lot of candidates were across the country.
Well, the Democrat was in a tougher position than Republicans.
Yeah,
the Republicans were, by the summer, Republicans were we don't care anymore, just go away. But there's a lot of Democrat voters that might have lost some enthusiasm by having a candidate come.
Absolutely, and we had folks in the House side both. We had some who knocked and some who didn't in that race, and there were people who got yelled at for knocking. So you're absolutely right. It was a tough spot to be in.
Interesting race. Curtis Gregory, Doug Ritchie would be the suburban versus the farmer. But the real question I think everybody wants me to ask you is, so Robbie Saul is going to run, Stephen Weber try to hold a tough seat, flip a seat. You got somebody trying to make a run at a tough seat to the 23rd and the 15th. When you start voting, you have Biden at the top, and then whoever runs against Hawley, and then we'll have to vote for governor. So I do believe Trudy Bush Valentine does not get the credit she deserves for funding that race to the end, giving a credible top of the ticket for you to pick up 3 seats. But this time in the state, you don't see that person unless she's sitting here.
That's what we hear. No, I want to echo what you said about Trudy. We were a -17 state. Trudy brought it to 13, right? And folks have lots of pros and cons about that race, but I definitely want to give a shout out for that. That
I don't think could have won the race.
We're now in a better situation than we were before that race, right?
I firmly believe that nobody could have won that race. That race was going to be in this state. When Eric Schmidt won, you might have beat Greitens, but I'm not even sure. But when Eric Schmidt won that primary, that race was effectively over. She probably knew that a couple weeks out and decided to write another check to help maintain the momentum at the top of that ticket and be helpful. And I think she must, in my heart, I believe she did that because it was the right thing to do.
And I think that's the key for Democrats in our state right now is maintaining momentum, right? We've flipped seats. We're closing the margins. We flipped some seats in the House. We will flip in the Senate next cycle. We'll flip more in the House. And that's the key of getting out of the superminority and to win the governor's mansion back is to continue to close those margins.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't really win the governor's mansion back without, candidate for governor.
Yes.
I'm right, correct?
We will have folks running. And yes, I am absolutely seriously considering a run. As I've said many times, right now I've got 8 days left in the legislature, and that is my job to make sure that we stop as many bad things as possible, we pass as many good things as possible, and we finish strong as a Democratic caucus. And so that's really what I'm doing right now. But yes, I am absolutely considering it, and I am flattered that folks continue to ask.
Well, I hope when you make a decision, you'll come back on This Week in Missouri Politics and talk about it.
I will.
We'll try to bring Flat Dog then too.
Maybe we can bring the real Doug.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
I would love to sit with
We
the
don't
senator.
like have him stand there holding that, then just kind of walk out behind it. We need a bigger studio, though, I guess. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you. May come back Friday, a little wrap-up session, but we'll see you, if nothing else, see you Sunday.